The Galactic Defense Academy's combat training hall fell silent as Instructor Zaxith's 4 eyes swept across the assembled cadets. The reptilian Vorthok had trained warriors from 17 different species over his 3-century career, but today's exercise would test even his extensive experience. Today's drill is simple, Zaxith announced, his translator converting his hissing speech into standard galactic. Disarm your opponent. No lethal force. No permanent damage. Begin with your assigned partner. 24 cadets stood in the UI's massive chamber, representing the cream of their respective species' military academies. There were the towering Krillian insectoids with their chitinous armor and razor-sharp forelimbs, graceful Etherian energy dancers who could phase through matter at will, stocky Terran miners whose rocky hides could deflect plasma fire, and a dozen other species that had earned their place in the galaxy's most elite training program. And then there was Marcus Chen. The human stood barely average height among the assembled beings, his soft pink flesh looking vulnerable next to scales, chitin, and mineral hide. His assigned partner was Vextar, a Krillian whose species had conquered 3 star systems through superior combat prowess. The insectoid's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. This will be brief, Vextar buzzed, extending his primary weapon, a bio-blade that emerged from his forearm like a living sword. Marcus nodded politely and drew his standard-issue plasma knife, its blue energy humming softly. Around the hall, other pairs began their matches. The sounds of combat filled the air, the whistle of energy weapons, the clash of hardened limbs against defensive barriers, the thrum of Etherian phase shifting. Vextar struck first, his blade cutting through the air with surgical precision. Marcus sidestepped, not with enhanced reflexes or supernatural speed, but with simple, efficient movement. The human's counterattack came immediately. Instead of blocking or parrying, he stepped inside Vextar's guard and pressed his plasma knife not against his opponent, but against the Krillian's weapon itself. The bioblade recoiled instinctively from the energy field, and in that split second of hesitation, Marcus did something unexpected. He smiled. Interesting reflex, Marcus said conversationally, as if they were discussing weather rather than engaged in combat. Your weapon is semi-autonomous, isn't it? It has its own nervous system. Vextar's compound eyes widened in surprise, but he recovered quickly, launching a series of rapid strikes. Marcus didn't try to match the Krillian's speed or strength. Instead, he did something far more unsettling. He began to narrate. Most species develop combat techniques based on their natural advantages, Marcus explained, deflecting a strike, by redirecting rather than blocking. Krillians rely on superior reflexes and integrated weaponry, but you know what humans developed instead? The plasma knife in Marcus's hand suddenly seemed to multiply. He wasn't moving faster, but somehow his single blade was intercepting attacks from impossible angles, creating defensive patterns that defied 3-dimensional logic. Psychology, Marcus continued, and now his voice carried to other pairs who were beginning to slow their own matches to watch. See, humans are persistence predators. We don't outrun our prey, we outlast them. We don't overpower them, we outweight them. And most importantly, Vextar's bioblade suddenly went limp, falling from his forearm like a wilted plant. The Krillian stared in shock as his primary weapon simply stopped working. We figure out exactly what makes them tick. Around the hall, other matches had ground to a complete halt. Every eye, optical sensor, and electromagnetic perception organ was focused on the human who had somehow convinced a Krillian bioweapon to stop functioning. How? Vextar clicked weakly. Marcus held up his plasma knife, but now everyone could see what he'd been doing. The energy field wasn't just a weapon. He'd been using it like a sophisticated medical scanner, analyzing the bioelectrical patterns of Vextar's weapon while they fought, and more than that, he'd been broadcasting specific frequencies designed to disrupt the creature's nervous system. Humans don't just fight, Marcus explained to the silent hall. We study. Every species we encounter, every technology we face, every combat technique we observe, we take it apart in our minds until we understand it completely. Your bioblade isn't just a weapon, Vextar. It's a living creature with predictable neurological responses, and living creatures can be convinced. Instructor Zax felt a chill run down his scales as he watched the human calmly deactivate his plasma knife. Around the hall, 24 of the galaxy's finest warriors stood frozen, not in fear but in the sudden understanding of what they'd just witnessed. The human hadn't just disarmed his opponent. In the space of a single training exercise, he'd demonstrated an understanding of Krillian biotechnology that their own scientists had spent centuries developing. And he'd done it while having a casual conversation. The exercise was to disarm your opponent, Zaxeth said slowly. Marcus nodded respectfully. Yes, sir. But you didn't specify we should stop there. The human looked around the hall at his fellow cadets, beings who had come here confident in their species' military superiority, their natural advantages, their technological prowess. Now they saw something that had made humans the most feared diplomats, the most effective negotiators, and the most successful military strategists in known space. Humans didn't just adapt to challenges, they consumed them, analyzed them, understood them so completely that the challenge itself became a tool in their hands. Class dismissed, Zaxeth announced, though his voice carried a note of something that might have been respect, or possibly concern. As the cadets filed out, Marcus Chen gathered his equipment with the same calm efficiency he'd shown throughout the exercise. Behind him, Vextar's bioblade was already beginning to regenerate, but the Krillian warrior continued staring at the human with something approaching awe. The training drill had been to disarm your opponent. The human had disarmed an entire philosophy of combat, leaving 24 future officers with a new understanding of why, despite their physical limitations, humans had become the galaxy's most requested military advisors. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon wasn't strength or speed or superior technology. Sometimes it was simply the terrifying patience to understand your enemy better than they understood themselves.